All right. Hi, I'm Christina Fletcher, and welcome, Amy. Thank you for coming live. And I'm hoping people are going to kind of come and join in as we go throughout this experience, as we explore emotions and frustration and negative emotions. I must admit, it's not a usual thing for me to be talking about negative emotions. Anyone who has worked with me knows that I usually talk about positive emotion, positive feeling, and raising your vibration or frequency in order to feel truest to yourself. But the thing is that you don't really know how that feels until you also know the contrast. And negative emotion, frustration, exhaustion, anxiety, and frustration or anger, any of the negative emotions really do give us information. They give us that sense of contrast that reminds us what feeling really connected and good to and connected to who we really are really feels like. So we're kind of diving deep onto the contrast in this class, and bear with me because we're going to be finding a few different ways and processes that you can reconnect to feeling good. Well, at the first stage, we're going to be looking at why negative emotion occurs in the first place, and really why that can be a spiritual message that your spirit is really trying to guide you back to that deep connection. Because let's face it, we are all busy and life is fast, and that sense of overwhelm and sense of high energy intensity that can really build can just make you feel like you're going to blow your top. And when that happens, your spirit is literally standing there going, come on over here, let's reconnect. Okay, let's pull up the workbook and I will dive deeper into that. Actually, first of all, I was going to do this too. First of all, a simple tool to create focus and to make sure that we're feeling present within ourselves and within this moment and within this content is just to simply stimulate your vagus nerve simply by some deep breaths. So if you'll just take a moment just to deeply breathe, to inhale on a count of 5 and exhale on a count of 5. We're just going to do that 6 times, so that will be 1 whole minute of deep breathing. Just bear with me. And then we'll be really present within this content. So inhaling for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and exhaling 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhaling 2, 3, 4, 5, and exhaling 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhaling 2, 3, 4, 5, and exhaling 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhaling 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhaling 2, 3, 4, 5. One last time. 2, 3, 4, 5. And exhaling 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. Little shake off of the hands, releasing any energy that's been with you through the day so that you can feel focused and calm as we dive in. All right. I am going to share my screen. If I can do that. There we go. I'm going to share my screen for most of this presentation just because I find that it's an easy way to guide through. You should be able to see me in the corner. And we can stop. Feel free to stop, pause. Amy, you're here live, so if you have any questions, just feel free to kind of give a shout out. Actually, I'm just going to mute that for a second. Then also just unmute yourself if you have a question. And also what I'm going to do is there is a Facebook event set up for this workshop, and if you have any questions that come up that afterwards you would like clarification, you can feel free to pop over there as well. All right, so let's dive in. It's interesting when you imagine the sense of frustration or that tension as an actual spiritual experience. Because in truth, and so often we are raised to believe that that is something to feel bad about, to feel guilty about, to suppress, to push down. And it's actually something that we should pretend we don't feel. So today is all about discussing how emotions, mainly negative emotions, that's what we're talking about, is really here as a secret code from your spiritual self, your heart center. And it's trying to convey to you and to help you to a place that feels more balanced, connected, and whole. So before we really fully dive into how this works, there's a few things to just kind of digest and let sink in. In your workbook, I put this image, and I did say that this is explained in this workshop material, because I know how tempting it is to kind of scan through material and kind of get a drift of what's happening, and then not fully dive into the full workshop experience. So I have put this in here as a little teaser. But the main reason what this image signifies is the fact that you are spiritual energy. And as spiritual energy is all around us and flowing down through each one of us, it flows from above, all flowing down through the top of your head, flowing down to your core center, down, tying you to the soles of your feet, down deep into the earth, a deep-rooted cord into the earth. And sometimes that image kind of baffles people, because they go, well, if you're spiritual energy and you're spiritual energy, but the universe is spiritual energy, then what differentiates the two? So this image is how I like to explain this. If you imagine the universal energy, however you perceive that to be, like a giant flow of water, and that flow of water flows down, filling a variety of different glasses, that each glass is an individual physical self. So spiritual energy flows down and fills that glass. It fills that glass, and as it fills, the glass itself holds the water, and at the same time, the essence of the glass also shifts that water. It adds an essence to that water. So you, as a vessel for spirit, your physical body is a vessel for spirit, a glass for spirit, and the spirit is constantly flowing. Now, as you spend your day, a few things happen. That energy, that water, that flows and resonates out from you. So there's a constant flow of flowing out, flowing to you, and flowing out. So, and as it flows to you, it flows through your chakras, your energy centers, and it takes on your perceptions, your opinions, who you are, the essence of yourself, and it resonates out as that. At the same time, that energy is continually flowing to you, flowing to you, flowing to you. Now, an interesting thing happens though, because as you're observing and being yourself in your life, you start to build up resistance. You can feel tension, you can feel negative emotion, which we're getting onto in a moment, and that will create imbalance, or some people might want to call blocks. Now, this is where we come on to our next sentence, which is where attention goes, energy flows. So if you imagine your attention all caught up in the stress of your day, your energy flowing through your head, building more and more pressure, the energy comes down, your thoughts are here, your attention's here, flowing, glass about to be full, but it can't quite get past here. Sometimes we might feel disconnected from being able to communicate who we really are. We have problems maybe listening to others, or possibly a sense of not being able to express ourselves of who we are. And in that, what happens? Simply, energy flow, block here. The key is to be fully connected in your sense of self. Energy flowing all the way through, down to the bottom of your glass. Okay? So, how does that look? Let's see. All right. Yep, that's good. All right. So, here we go. Okay, so here we go. As positive energy, you know you're fully connected to your whole spiritual self. You are full in that glass when you are feeling positive emotion. Why is that? Because the flow, the energy flow, that water is love. It is pure positive energy, pure positive love. That's what we all are. So if that's what we all are, that energy flows down through you and it fills you up. And positive energy, whenever you are fully connected, rooted to the ground, then that is when you start feeling hopeful, satisfied. You start feeling joy. You feel blissful, happiness. That's when you all of a sudden feel so in flow that you just relax and you go, it's all taken care of. All right, so this has been, you'll see the picture on the other bottom, which at the bottom of this page, which is really the emotional guidance scale. This was introduced by Abraham Hicks, the channeled conscious energy that's done through Esther Hicks. I can talk to you more about that later. And really what this image reminds us is that there's a general scale, or flow or connection as we build up step by step of emotion and how things feel. And really, the simple explanation of this is if you imagine the top one in that blue of joy, empowerment, freedom, love, appreciation, that feeling of amazing flow, that is an indicator of complete and utter connection to who you really are, your spiritual flow. Now, if you go on the opposite side, down to, I think they've numbered it as number 22 on this image, fear, grief, depression, powerlessness, and victimhood, that is a sense of complete disconnection, a disconnection of who you really are from that connected flow. Now, interestingly enough, and what we'll look at a little bit, is when you are in a state of negative emotion, further negative emotions can really pop up. Those further negative emotions can be things like shame for feeling negative, stress and worry for being angry because you worry about how it's going to influence others. There's a sense of holding on to your communication because you don't know about expressing how that, you worry about expressing and causing further damage. There's a whole range of negative emotions that kind of flow through other negative emotions. And as you tend to hold yourself in a space of negative emotion when you experience them, what ends up happening is it feels like you kind of dig yourself a further hole. We bury them for that very reason, because we just think we need to hold on. It's a bit like pain. You know when you're in pain and you think you have to hold on to the pain rather than ride the pain? Okay. So, however, when you remember that the emotions are really that flow, that universal love calling to you through its own individual language of emotion, reminding you that you're not connected fully, and because you're not connected fully, guiding you to feeling better. So when you become more and more aware of being able to stop within a negative emotion, feel the negative emotion, and then be able to go acknowledge the negative emotion, going, feeling really, really stressed out, I'm really feeling the anxiety starting to build. If you see it as a spiritual message, as Spirit's way of saying, hey, I can't connect and fill up from that place. I can't connect with you from there. Come back. Then you start to remember things like the emotional guidance scale, and you start working your way further up. You start focusing on the little things that can bring contentment, or you start giving yourself things to focus on that might make you feel more hopeful. You start considering things that you appreciate, which then raise your vibration and raise your vibration and raise your emotional self up the emotional scale, which then gives you an indicator that you're connecting more to spirit. Okay. All right. How are we so far? Is that okay? All right. So that's really the basic concepts of how this works. You are spirit. The universe is spirit. Your spiritual energy is continually wanting that deep connection so you can live a life of flow. But we have a tendency to experience that negative emotion and choke it up and hold on to that negative emotion and feel like we can't shift from it. But when you remember that that negative emotion in itself is a spiritual language calling you back to connection, then it's a question of retraining thoughts in order to find out what those emotions truly, truly mean. All right, now, in the workbook, as I switch back and forth because my screen is doing funny things. Okay, in the workbook, I just kind of put down a few practical questions because it's all fine to give you this information, but I want to make sure that you have the interconnection to what we're talking about. So I want you to first kind of sit with your emotional state and just consider, what's your dominant emotional state? What is the feeling that you find yourself kind of banging around most of? The interesting thing about emotional scale is we tend to kind of function on a disc, a spinning disc of one emotion at a time. A range of emotions at a time. So you might kind of find that you kind of have this gray emotional area where it will rise up a little or dip down a little or raises up a little or raises down a little, but it's still a general vicinity of certain emotions. So you might find if you think about your dominant state, it's just kind of about movement through your day, and that's totally fine. It's just really just becoming about aware of how that feels and what that is. So then as the more you become aware of how you feel on a dominant basic proclivity, you're going to be able to be aware of how you want to shift and where you want to move forward. So first examine what's your dominant emotional state. And then I want you to ask yourself, what do you love to feel? What is your ideal state? What is the feeling that, even if you've only felt it once or a few times in your life, what was it that you just went, you know what? That is a phenomenal way of being. And then I want you just to kind of consider, how often do you feel that way? Because when you consider how often you feel that way, you're going to be considering more of your dominant state. You're going to understand the range of what you're working in. Okay? Just going to take a drink of water while you kind of consider. Okay, now, usually whenever I talk emotions, I have a tendency to work negative through to positive. And it's kind of funny for me to be working on it like this way, but it felt like the right way to do it for the purpose of this. So if you, so usually I would end you off on the high note, but we're diving into the negative emotion. So I just want to kind of guide you over in that direction. So what negatives come up the most often? What are your triggers? What's really, how does it feel, a negative emotion? I mean, some people will find that they flip out really easily. Anger, frustration, intense emotion, passion in a negative fashion shows up the most. Other people may find that they actually lean more towards despair, that they lean towards anxiety, worry, or, I mean, we're talking about exhaustion today as well. And those all lead into that heavier space. So really deciding which way your negative emotion has a tendency to go will also give you a little bit of clarity. Oh, my voice went pitchy there. Okay, so then what does the negative emotion feel like to you? If anyone's done my child's course, Spiritual Kids, I talk a lot about how emotions have a tendency to be generalized. We talk about stress, we talk about we talk about tiredness, we talk about anger, we talk about the emotions with names. Sometimes using terms about actually how they feel can give a lot more clarity. So like we described, if it's a despair, anxiety, exhaustion, there's a heaviness in there, isn't there? There's a feeling of, oh. there's a weight there. So when you start looking at how negative emotion feels to you, you start to kind of just get a glimpse of the vibrational frequency of that. So heaviness, there can be heaviness, there can be fast, you can feel in an anger, in a passion, you can feel that momentum build and build and build, and to the point that you just feel your head swelling. So how does negative emotion feel like to you? Okay. So next, I want to look at how each one of, we're going to look at a few different emotions, emotional states. And these are really, I'm not diving into the deep anxiety or deep depression, and we're not going to go into anger or rage or anything that's really extreme. I want rather work with the more daily negative emotions that can pop up, the things that we actually can feel guilty or ashamed or want to resist the most. And I want to look at those as a spiritual language. So, and because it's interesting, isn't it? Because just like any language, the subtleties have different meanings. And that different meanings can often symbolize either the negative chatter we're giving ourselves or the different tools that we need to kind of launch ourselves back into connection. And the reason why those feel so different is because spirit is actually giving us guidance to deal with it differently. All right. I love this quote from Abraham Hicks. We're talking Abraham Hicks again. Anytime you feel negative emotion, stop and say, something is important here. Otherwise, I would not be feeling this negative emotion. Isn't that a powerful statement? Because how often do we actually just push negative emotion underneath the carpet, right? Like how often do we just kind of go, that feels really bad. I'm just going to stick a Band-Aid on it and not look at it. And I'm going to shove it over in the corner and pretend I'm feeling something else. And although focusing on the positive is the ultimate step to connection and interconnection, there's a subtlety in that. Because the thing is that if you just push the negative emotion under a rug without fully acknowledging it and understanding it and listening to it, then it just becomes like a big happy face sticker. Abraham Hicks talks about that they really say, you're basically just like, it's like driving your car, and you, if you're driving your car and you look at your gas tank and you see it's running on empty, people, you would never in the million years would you just take a happy face sticker like the ones you get at Walmart and stick it all in your gas gauge and say, well, I'm just going to pretend that doesn't exist. You wouldn't do that. Your negative emotion is truly like your gas tank. It is telling you, red light, we're headed on to empty. So if you don't listen to the indicators that are around you, then you're running on empty and you could really end up stranded or in far deeper states than if you listen to them and fill up. All right, so here we go. Otherwise, I would not be feeling this negative emotion if it wasn't something important. So, okay, let's just dive in here. Let's dive into some emotional states. Oh, we're gonna have to really do some energy clearing and shaking this off here. Frustration. Okay, so frustration. What physical experience do you get from that feeling of frustration? It's interesting because for me, frustration, it just feels like that intense buildup, right? Like you just feel it building up from within you. And it feels like, I don't know, like skin will crawl. You just feel like you stop breathing. It's a whole range of intense emotion. And it comes from all directions for me. Mentally, it starts grabbing hold of interesting negative stories that will kind of come in from different directions. It will start to blame other people, or it will start to consider things as really, just not working, and you just feel it build and build and build and build. And it usually comes from things happening very fast, things kind of coming at a very fast rate, observing, and things that have to be processed really quickly. And in a modern day world where everything is so focused on multitasking and on running as many things as possible, that is something that's really, really easy to fall into. So frustration, in my mind, is Spirit's way of saying way too much. If you imagine that water pouring down, right? So the water's flowing down, and that energy that comes and fills up yourself is infused and shifted by how you are observing life and experiencing life. And so you have the information flowing in from different directions, right? So attention is on all these elements, and it's building, and you're processing and processing and processing and processing. And it's almost like you just feel like you're throwing wood on a fire, and that wood is just like you're throwing it on, and it's just flaming and flaming and flaming and flaming, and there's no slow burn. So there's an overload. So frustration, that sense of build, stress, and calling, all those various elements are really Spirit saying, stop, ground, breathe, just catch up a little. Focus on something specific, focus on your breath. The breath that we did at the beginning of this, that's a great frustration reliever. It's a question of finding that grounded presence, that sense of finding that root, allowing energy to catch up, allowing the fire to consume. I mean, anyone who does my chakra class, we talk about the solar plexus as your inner fire. That is your inner fire there that's consuming everything you observe. So if you imagine that inner fire being stoked, and sometimes you feel frustration in your stomach, it's like flaming. So breathe, let things settle down just a little bit. Let that fire just burn off some of what it's consuming, and find that balance. And some of that, you can say, well, that sounds really easy. That sounds really easy. But let's face it, often frustration comes when you have lots of kids running around and there's lots of action happening and someone's spilling something over here, or you're trying to stop the cat from doing something over here, and there's this kind of general bombardment of panic. So that experience of uptight here, in that spiritual sense, and Spirit saying, whoa, too much. And you kind of go, yeah, Spirit, I get it. It is too much, but it's kind of too much for me. And I understand. You actually have, there's a natural tendency to say, I can't breathe there. How do I breathe? Inviting Spirit in, and shifting attention to, if negative emotion is really Spirit's way of saying, I can't go in there with you, from that perception, it doesn't mean it can't come into the situation with you. It really does stop. When I say stop, ground, breathe, let the dust settle, it can actually be stop, ground, breathe, chaos everywhere. Okay, help. Spirit, help. And Spirit flows. You focus on your feet, you get grounded and rooted, and it takes milliseconds. And all of a sudden, that energy that's been feeling bombarded can radiate out from you and take care of things from a grounded, focused position, connected. Okay? As a spiritual repair coach, I am all about practical spirituality. I am all about creating simple tools to reconnect to who you really are and how you flow and how you feel connected to yourself. And it's not about long, deep breaths. It's literally deep breaths while you're still changing your baby, or while you're nursing, or it's all about that constant flow. Okay. And Amy, feel free to just jump in if you have any questions, if anything's coming up, by all means. All right. Exhaustion is an interesting one because I did a survey within the group, the Spiritual Aware Parenting Facebook community, and it was one of the most common negative emotions that you feel in preparation for this workshop. And exhaustion actually really hit right up there as one of the top ones. And I thought that's really interesting because you don't usually think of exhaustion as an emotion. And then I sat with it and I thought about it. And I thought, no, it's really actually important to make the spiritual link to exhaustion. I'll tell you why. Okay, so first of all, I want you to kind of look at your own experience of exhaustion. What physical experiences do you get with it? What mental, and what triggers it? I'm betting about 9.5 out of 10 of you are going to say, well, what triggers it is not enough sleep. But it's an interesting thing because exhaustion is so much more than tiredness. Exhaustion leads to it's a soul weariness. Exhaustion is when you feel so outflowed. You feel so drained. There can be a sense of just not having any more to give. It's a sense of drain in exhaustion. And you know, you can be dog tired and having no sleep at all. And in that no sleep, you can be in a state of you know, you can still have no sleep, and then you can wake up and you can find a connection practice and you can do your appreciation rampages and you can put the bookends in place like I always deal with my clients, and you can do different processes that help you feel true to yourself. And that true to yourself person, you know, the body might be tired, but spiritual flow is present, and that water, that flow is flowing continually to you. And then there's exhaustion. And exhaustion means that flow has flowed out, and it's not being allowed to reside in you long enough to truly be imprinted by your personal imprint. Okay? Your personal sense of that energy isn't having time to truly flow out. So exhaustion can be really linked with just giving too much, drained out. It's really Spirit's way of saying stop, refuel, rejuvenate, fill up. Remember, you aren't alone. Exhaustion is an interesting indicator that we feel a bit stranded, that we feel like Spirit is for everything else. And maybe even what's funny is that often it can come into supporting everybody else's spirit and forgetting to support our own. That's a big one. So if you find that you're being knocked with exhaustion, and I mean, I'm going to be going over a few other steps further on. And yes, I say 45 minutes, but these things always take longer, and I know that. When you remember that exhaustion is all about rejuvenation, there's a few things you can do. Really can just be as simple as focusing on your feet, plugging in, a few deep breaths, holding your hand to your heart and finding center. Savoring your senses. Exhaustion can actually become such a heady ordeal that we can actually forget to really truly feel in our bodies. And that's why, you know, sometimes when you're exhausted and you actually decide to push yourself and actually do like dancing around the house or something to build up energy, you're really calling life force back. You're calling passion back. You know, you can be totally exhausted, and then all of a sudden you start talking to a friend that you haven't seen and you start laughing, and all of a sudden you're like, I was really exhausted. I don't understand. It's all about calling life force back to you. All right. All right, so now scattered focus. All right, so scattered focus is more and more prevalent. It's funny because I posted in this workbook, and I kind of threw it in there, but I thought, you know what, this is something to really kind of consider. I do wonder if people felt as scrambled or as scattered focus like 50 years ago as much as they do now. Because scattered focus, again, although these are subtleties we're talking about, and I want to encourage you to really look at the actual subtleties between exhaustion and scattered focus, and that's why I put the two together. Because as you feel the drain out, that kind of bottomless pit of exhaustion as you've been spent out, scattered focus feels like a whirling top. You just kind of feel discombobulated, you know? So if you imagine where tension goes, energy flows, then that energy is all over. So it's like a leaky sieve. So that leaky sieve of energy, it's like spinning around in a circle, and then all of a sudden you just can't focus on anything. You have no idea how many clients I will talk to, and it's like, okay, you know, this is how, you know, how are you feeling? How is your focus? And they'll just say, I just, you know, I can't focus. I just have no focus. So, often too, what they'll find is because they can't focus and they're scattered in all directions, what ends up happening is this actually leads to a level of anxiety because they can't keep up with all the things that are pulling their attention. And because their attention goes where energy flows, where attention goes, then their attention's everywhere and their energy's feeling scattered. And what's interesting is that the more scattered you feel, the more you can't feel like yourself. You've given your energy into all these different directions. It turns watery. And I don't want that to be linked to the water image that I've given you before, but it turns wishy-washy. It just kind of doesn't feel like you can grasp yourself. So scattered focus is Spirit's way of saying, gather, connect, and claim. Claim. You know, I never knew the power of claiming until a couple of years ago. I read Danielle Laporte, Her White Hot Truth, and she was talking about how whenever she goes somewhere or moves houses, she always goes through the house and claims herself back from every room that she's leaving. And she does that from hotel rooms that she stays in or anywhere she goes and spends any amount of time. She claims herself back. And the image of that, the sensation of that, claiming yourself back, where your attention goes, that's part of you. So when you claim yourself back, you release that link. Hi, Bonnie. It's lovely to have you. Thank you for joining. We're just discussing negative emotions. We're just on to feeling scattered focus. So that feeling of scattered, with attention goes, energy flows. And when you have that scattered energy everywhere, that is Spirit's way of saying, claim. Bring yourself back to center. Claim who you are. Claim the flow that is flowing down from you, flowing down through you, and connecting and rooting you to this present moment. And actually, I'm going to share with you the exercise now. Okay, because one of my very favorite exercises to practice with scattered focus is what I call the octopus. And the octopus is a powerful mental image that, and like I said, like practical spirituality tools, that's what I flow with. That's what I function with. No one has time to do long drawn out spiritual connection practices. So if you're feeling yourself scattered, and that scattered focus, that drained out, pulled in all direction feeling, emotional state, which can then lead to a sense of anxiety or a sense of even like deep depression, or it feels just so depleting. you pull up the octopus. And the octopus is simply this. If you imagine an octopus will have its tentacles spread out in all directions, right? And I'll actually even get clients to draw a circle or an image of an octopus and have that drawn out in lines coming out from the circle. And you simply write one of your focuses for every tentacle. You imagine that you are an octopus with your tentacles spread out in every direction. And each tentacle is something that is drawing your attention, something that is scattering you. You know, you can have over in one direction, you can have your to-do list. Over in another, you can have having to organize kids' camps or schools. Another direction, you can have all the housework or decisions that need to be made at work. Then behind you, you might have a tentacle that's holding on to your past and things that happened a long time ago that you need to feel like you need to clear. You can have another tentacle that's worried about your future, and it can be, you know, scattered focus scatters wide. So if you imagine those tentacles holding on to each one of those things, and your attention has been trying to maintain all of them and juggle all of them, you feel your attention scattered, and you imagine a radius of these tentacles all around you. But the key to remember about an octopus is you never look at an octopus and only see its tentacles. You don't actually identify the octopus as its tentacles. You identify an octopus as its core, as its center. So scattered energy is only putting attention on those tentacles spread out. So you take a very deep breath, tentacles in place, and then you shift your attention to your heart center, your core. The octopus present, centered. I'll often encourage clients to just come up with a word that symbolizes that core center of who they are. You know, you've had that scattered energy. You can choose to drop your tentacles and imagine them drop, then return to center. You can just withdraw your energy entirely in focused center. And as a word, I've had so many amazing, beautiful words resonate with people as that core center of themselves. I've heard calm, I've heard sacred, I've heard connected, I've heard, you know, a lot of times people just say, me, I just feel like me, I'm me. And you go, yeah, you're you. So when you feel that indicator of scattered focus, just remember that it's Spirit's way of saying you need to claim yourself. Your attention is going everywhere. So your energy is going everywhere. Claim. All right. Okay. That feel good to everyone? Everyone good? All right. You can feel free to just unmute, give a hand up, do as ever you wish. I don't know if there's a raise your hand on this surface or not. Anyway. Okay. Here we go. So if you understand that your spiritual message that there's a spiritual message beneath your emotion and you've tuned into what that message is, you can change within moments to be able to align and connect. So I hope you've seen that so far. And then you just simply move up the emotional scale, which is what we talked about earlier, that it really is about building that experience of finding connection again. So just to recap, with frustration, that feeling of bombarding energy, feeling like you're just being pushed under with so much intense energy flowing to you, you breathe deep, you focus on your feet, you imagine that dust settling. Release control. Spirit's got your back. You let Spirit and you invite Spirit to help take care of all of the things that are around you. Exhaustion. You sit and you tend. You tend your spiritual well. You remember that you are connected to something so much greater. And in that exhaustion, you allow yourself to refill up. You imagine a beautiful waterfall of light and spiritual support flowing from above all around you. Imagine your spiritual guides, if that's something connected that you connect to, standing beside you, holding you. I've been working with a couple of clients lately about their ancestors, and they've actually been really connecting with the sense that their ancestors are holding space for them and supporting them. So lean into support, knowing that you're not alone. Let the feeling of drained out be pulled back to yourself, and that you can actually continue to give yourself energy, and that energy is flowing to you. Listen deeply, heart center, and then feel guided. Scattered focus, gather. Imagine all those paths of your focus and decide, choose, claim your octopus. I bet you've never had that as a cool tool before. So, also you can claim affirmations. Affirmations are great focuses, and introducing that new sense of belief. Okay. Now, parents, we're parents. You're parents. And as parents, there's always going to be this little indicator that says, well, okay, so that's great. That's my emotions. Yeah. Now what about my kids? And we all do that. And I totally hear that. So in that, yeah, of course, this is your kids. Absolutely. Your kids feel emotions so much more intensely than us, and it happens fast. They do not have the filtration system in place that we all have had put in place. They feel it so quickly. And they, as I say, they experience emotion without any of the nattering judgments that adults tend to imply on them. So frustration isn't buried within like a pressure pot. Rather, it boils up through a release of energy overload. It's throw things about, it's scream, it's shout, it's slam doors. It is a buildup of energy. Exhaustion, well, lie down sometimes, just despite, the big drape, the big lie down in the middle of a store somewhere. Expectation, social expectation often doesn't matter. Anxiety, scattered attention, and I even put symptoms of ADHD is often because a child is feeling so scattered in their attention. Their energy is flowing everywhere. It's like a giant fog of not being able to claiming themselves. So you're going to know your child. By you using these tools, you're going to be able to tune into your child. I mean, I should really do another workshop on this specifically to child's emotions, because they will experience it and need different tools to connect to themselves. This is what I work on with clients when we work one-on-one, where they can listen to their child and understand it from that deeper level. But really, it does take practicing that sense of yourself, that interconnection within yourself, first and foremost. So there's definitely... But tiptoeing into this, when you see your child experiencing an emotion, asking what their spirit needs, asking what their spirit is feeling, asking how this is, how they can find their way back to connection, you're going to find that all of a sudden that shifts the dialogue. It shifts the feeling of needing them to change their behavior in order to feel better yourself. You're going to find that all of a sudden you see it through a spiritual lens. So that's really part of what spiritually aware parenting is all about, is that because being aware of your own sense of self, your own essence, your own connection to your spirit, all of a sudden you get a window into the understanding of how your child is connecting or disconnecting from their own spirit, and how their behavior is an indicator of that connection. And the more you practice interconnection yourself, the beautiful development of that is that then you understand their connection so much better. But like I said, I mean, I'm already over the time that I promised you people that this would be, so I do apologize. Okay, so, but for many parents, the thing is that, and for just people in general, the thing is that we build layers upon layers and layers of shoulds and extra baggage that clouds our spiritual messaging from our emotions. And like we talked about at the beginning of this, we have a negative emotion, and then because we have a negative emotion, we feel shame for the negative emotion, and then we feel negative emotion about the shame, and then it builds layer after layer after layer after layer. And then we just decide, I'm going to put that in the closet somewhere, hide it away, lock it away, and I'm just going to, pretend I'm happy. I'm going to pretend everything's fine. And like we talked about, that really does churn into the sense of running a car on an empty tank of gas and sticking a happy face sticker on saying it's going to be fine. It really does take acknowledging the negative emotion and working your way up through to connection of your spiritual self. It's really about having a connection practice in place, knowing how to connect to your spirit, understanding how it feels like to be connected to your spiritual self. It's really about finding that support system that's actually resonating as that energy flowing down through your core. So ask yourself, what does it feel like to be you? What does your unique individual joy feel like? Your unique sense of stillness, your unique sense of connection. How does it feel to be whole in your spiritual self? And honestly, I would say that it is more than likely you're going to sit there kind of going, those are really big questions. And you know, I think most people would just kind of hover with the pen above the page. And there's a good reason for that, because you can only really call that feeling up in a state of deep connection. And you might have a practice totally in place, and you might have it so that you can find that resonance really, really quickly. And even then, it will be really impossible to find words to describe it, because words don't necessarily convey spiritual energy, and you are unique energy. And to sum that up can be difficult. But even if you just find that it feels like relief, it feels centered, it feels radiant, it feels flow. How's it feel? And do you have a practice in place that you are able to find that feeling whenever you need, or as often as possible? So I really want to encourage you to just dive in to the feeling of your unique energetic self. How does it feel when you are truly in a state of flow, allowing that flow from the universe to flow down all the way through you and root you to the ground? And you know, like, but I'm not going to beat about the bush. This is what I help my clients do. This is when I work one-on-one with a client. This is what we work through. We work through the energy work that I do with clients is all about allowing them to feel grounded and present in themselves. We work on creating that energy flow, so their energy is flowing all the way down, rooted to the ground. So within that energy session, they are getting that feeling. They are practicing that sense of truly being one and whole within themselves. We then also will be working through, we work through different practices and different processes that they can do that calls themselves back immediately to themselves. We make sure they have bookends in place. We make sure that those bookends, the bookends to their day of their morning practice and their evening practice. So simple focuses that will call you back to yourself. And that is what I work with. I mean, and there's other things that you can do. There are things that you can do. That's journaling and meditation and exercise. I put dancing in there because, quite honestly, it's like what we said, where you call yourself back. There's life force that flows through dancing, shaking it off. Breathing Space members are very used to having a shaking meditation every Sunday, where they will just shake and shake and shake and shake to release and to allow energy to flow off of them. There's lists that go on, and it's really about tuning in by using your emotional guidance, by understanding what your emotions are telling you. You adapt your processes to connection by listening within, understanding that, so you know what your spirit is telling you and what you need to reconnect. And often there's just that baggage of shoulds that need to be released. So sometimes one of those octopus tentacles, the ones that are holding on to the past, sometimes those can just be, sometimes it can pass on a negative emotion proclivity I was talking to a woman the other day, and we were talking about how she knew that she'd been passed on through her life a sense of struggle, that life was she didn't allow herself to be as happy as she wanted to be because life needed to be hard. And And those are things of limiting beliefs that need to be released. They need to be cleared so you can claim yourself back from them. And so that you can truly move forward, developing who you want to be and your experience here and now. Okay. So simply this, in conclusion, what you are feeling, no matter what's happening in your day, there's nothing wrong with what you're feeling. It is always a message from your heart. It's a guidance system. It is calling you forward. That is asking you to reconnect, to find center, and to connect to that true energy of who you are. And as an energetic being, you have a feeling, and it's a blissful, joyful state that is truly you. It's a feeling of flow, and that feeling will be unique to you. The pathway to that will actually feel unique to you. You will find that some things sing for you where it doesn't sing for others. So it's a message that can be listened to, and your emotions are there to guide you. It's heard by dropping to heart center, breathing deep, and reminding yourself of what it feels like to feel like yourself, and then moving forward from there. Okay. So, and I mean, really, like I said, this is what I help people with through all my coaching programs and through the Breathing Space, which is my membership program. We really do always find those spaces of connection, the deep-rooted sense of who you are, so you can be authentic to who you want to be and how you want to flow with your family. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I am going to simply open up the floor. I'm just going to continue recording for a few minutes. Amy, Bonnie, if you have any questions that might come up, feel free. You can unmute yourself. Hi, baby. Hi. Fantastic. All right. If there's any questions, did you have any questions?
You know, I did not have any questions, but thank you, Christina. It was interesting throughout your entire discussion how connected everything was and how things sort of clicked for me, working with my children and trying to acknowledge, okay, let's talk about your feelings, or let's hit pause and just have a breather, hug it out, whatever the case may be, so we don't get to tantrum mode.
Yeah.
But never fully acknowledging before, it kind of clicked for me as you were talking that, you know, I was having my own little tantrums and meltdowns because I was frustrated and overwhelmed, which was then leading to exhaustion, thinking I would have to just push through and work through everything rather than just saying, you know, take a minute, let's reconnect. And so that was so helpful for me, making that connection with something I was trying to grasp and work with my children on, but not doing it for myself, you know, and realizing how that can be so helpful.
Yeah.
So that was really nice, just hearing about that domino effect and thinking back on how I have seen and lived through that day to day, you know, for myself. Yeah. But so I look forward to practicing some of your tips.
Fantastic. That's excellent. I'm so glad that you said that, because yeah, it's amazing how we can want to help them so fast, right? Like we see them and go, oh my God, we want them to connect so fast. And then it's like, yeah, it does lead to exhaustion because you are spreading it out. And it's about really allowing that flow to flow through you. And you said it so well. I mean, when you verbalize these things to your kids, when you, oh my God, your baby's just adorable. Hi. You're so attentive. I feel like I'm talking. Okay, we'll talk about this. It's when you verbalize, okay, you know what? Hold on. I'm feeling really disconnected. I'm not feeling whole here. When you actually make an honest journey with your kids, all of a sudden it all becomes doable, and they are getting the tools of seeing the steps, because that's what often kids are missing out on. They miss out on the actual steps of how to feel better. It's almost like we tell them, okay, let's feel better, and then they too are just building up that kind of, okay, I have to look like I'm feeling better while I stick the happy face sticker up. Mm-hmm. When you're taking the steps through them and you're acknowledging, oh, I'm feeling like this, you know, you actually are giving them the tools of how they can actually find their way back to connection themselves. And Not really is. That side of parenting is really what I love to dive into, because really it's all about helping our kids have the tools for their own connection rather than just ask them to be connected so fast. Yeah.
And we could probably do that in a better way if we're doing it ourselves. We can probably.
Always, always, absolutely. And it actually, like, it's funny because even just, I find that just those steps, doing it yourself and then verbalizing that you're doing it yourself, will actually help children far more. You know, it's like, I used to try to squeeze like meditating into like times when my kids were like asleep or busy or doing things like, you know, but the more I started verbalizing, actually, I'm feeling kind of stressed out. I'm feeling really tight inside. I'm feeling like I'm getting really strangled. I really need to just go and take a few minutes. And I verbalized that. I watched as I would see them start to feel stressed, and all of a sudden they'd be like, you know, I better just take a few minutes. And I would watch as that, just me saying that for myself, would all of a sudden pass on those kind of things to them. And it's amazing because like it wouldn't have clicked for them. And from early on, they had just been taught, well, this is what you do. You know, they wouldn't have seen the thing. So I know sometimes I'll sit with parents and they'll be like, you know, I just feel like it's too late. I should have been knowing this stuff before becoming a parent. And you go, no, it's actually perfect, because they're witnessing you go from to actually, I know that I'm like this, so therefore I know I need to do this, this, and this. And that's, you can't get a better tool for a child. You know, my daughters will happily tell anyone how they're really, really glad I discovered how to do these kind of things, because I didn't when I first had and they saw me strung out and stressed, and they can acknowledge how that made a big difference. So yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it too.
Oh, absolutely. Everything's perfect timing. Our kids knew exactly who they were coming to and the times they were coming with. Yeah. And they said, yeah, we want to work through that with you, actually. So yeah, definitely. Definitely. Fantastic. Oh my God, look at the smile. I love it so much. Perfect. Great. Bonnie, did you have any questions or anything that you wanted to add?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, my pleasure. Absolutely. Okay, so one of the things that I did want to mention very quickly was that I am opening up to a few other coaching spots. I have a 7-week program that I have a few 6-week. Did I just say 7? It's a 6-week coaching program that I am opening up a few spots to. So I will be sharing information out in an email to everyone so that you can check that out. Anyone who has signed up for this webinar, I am offering 3 months to the Breathing Space membership program included in the coaching program. So it's 6 weeks, and instead of $900, it's actually only $750 for anyone who has been on this program. So that's going to be sent out to your inbox, but also I'm going to be closing off the recording now, and then Amy and Bonnie, if you can stick around, because I am giving you a little bonus for coming live. So thank you. All right, so thank you so much for attending. Please keep a lookout on your inbox for any information on that program, because I'm really, really excited to dive deep into putting some of these practices into place, to making sure that you have the practice and the support that you need in order to make sure that you can find true attunement to yourself, that you can feel that deep energetic feeling of connection to your spiritual flow, knowing that flow is flowing down through you, rooting you to the ground, making sure that you feel connected as yourself so that you can work in the chaos of your day. So within 6 weeks, we really put those bookends in place. We put the connection practices in place. We give, there's a lot of tools that I can offer you to make sure that you can pull out whatever you need, so that through the flow of working with your kids, you're feeling present in yourself. And then we dip into a few, releasing some things that might be holding you back from that as well. So I will be sending information out on that. And if you have any questions, by all means, you can pop into the event page, which is over on Facebook, and you'll find that in the email. I am more than happy. I will make sure that I answer any questions that show up there and help you find any clarity that you might need in this material. All right. Love and light, everyone, and thank you so much. Bye now.